Emily, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Same.
So let me ask you my favorite question for all my guests. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That's wow. That's like a shocker. What's the best piece of advice I've ever received? If you're perfect at one thing, we know. Yeah. One of my health coaches, actually.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
neat. I always love those little life lessons we kind of live by.
Yes, that like applies to everything. And
I'm curious, when you think about your life, who are some people who serve to be an inspiration for you?
that's I love that question too. My kids for sure, even though they're like so innocent and young, they keep me inspired and motivated and just so curious by their curiosity. My parents, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of amazing mentors along the way. And some coaches and just people who really are curious and open to conversations and questions and kind of like when you find a good gem, you know it. And so staying true with them. I just had an amazing conversation with a client who is transitioning away from the company she's currently at and just, kind of saying it was like goodbye for now until she figures out her next thing. But like, once you're connected with good people, it's hard to leave them. So
It's
yeah.
so very true. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. So tell us about your journey from the Sweet 16 invitation and spectrum to this creative journey that you have right now.
Yes. So I've always been a person who was creatively curious about how the world works. I didn't obviously have a term for that, but my mom used to say I broke things because I like to see how things worked. I like to touch them. I'm actually like fidgeting with something right now too, because the idea of how parts come together and keeping my mind and my body connected were so important to me. And so my Sweet 16 invitation, I mean, what I don't know, it was like 30 something years ago. And computers were just coming out. We had just gotten some update or some new machine that had some kind of draw-esque program. And I was really excited to build something. But what I remember most about it and what was that pivotal moment was when I printed that first draft and sharing it with my parents and how their smiles and their joy that kind of radiated from them of not only what it was and like obviously this moment in my life was, kind of a big moment to turn 16, but also just that I made something and that I was so proud of it and that yet it was still quirky and questionable fonts and colors these days. Looking back, it was the idea that I built something, that I took the time to craft something with love and with intention that brought people together, that made them happy, that invited everybody into this inclusive space. And that was a special event, and it was that moment, and just hearing, the feedback or the excitement around not just my birthday, but the fact that I made this thing and wow, and I loved that. And so it started my journey. I always loved art. There was something about it. Again, I was somebody who saw the world as simple shapes and broke it down. I didn't know that, but that's just what I did. And so when I got into art and then when I learned about graphic design or graphics on the computer, it was a perfect fit for me because it allowed me to take shapes and forms and make things. Drawing 101 is about breaking down shapes and forms and bodies or still lives into simple, basic shapes and then adding and layering and building these beautiful stories. So that started my career. It got me really interested. I studied visual communications at the University of Kansas, graduated with a BFA and a minor in art history. Again, understanding the why and the purpose and intention behind how things are made and trends and just how people saw the world was so interesting to me. I worked in the agency world for almost 15 years. Loved the fast pace, the culture, the environment, the creativity, just the collaboration was just so huge. I'm actually still super tight with some of my first coworkers just because of the hours that went into building campaigns and brainstorming together and getting silly to get, to release all these juices. And then I found myself outside of the agency world. And at 8.5 months pregnant, actually, I was laid off from a startup. And I've never looked back. I decided that I was never going back to where I was, but I didn't know what that meant moving forward. I had a mentor who was kind of willing to bet on me. He hired me for whatever I needed, or he was willing to give me 40 hours of work a week. So he kind of took took that fear out, or that I had like that safety net of like, okay, I know I can work. And that was 5 years ago. And ever since then, I've explored what it's like to be a general creative designer. And then in January, I niched myself to just do presentation work when I realized that that is my zone of genius. And here I am a year later, and couldn't be happier at how my journey is. And I'm excited for what 2025 brings, and what each day and each new step of this hustle and each new failure teaches me, so I can keep moving forward. And going back to your first question, I just have been perfect at never giving up, and it's been the best journey ever.
Love that. I'm curious. I do a lot of presentations myself, and my goal is always to try to make something unique and different and creative. So, if you think about a presentation, what are some of the key elements that are going to making the presentation captivating?
Yes, it's going to be being intentional with your design choices or what your story is. It's going to be being simple and being consistent. And so when you can start by knowing your audience and what you want them to think, feel, and do, when you think about that before you even think about what you're saying, it's so critical. It sets you up to tell the right story. And then when you craft your narrative, again, it's keeping that in mind, but it's walking them through that story. It's giving them the right information, not all of the information, just the right information that they need. Because if we over communicate, we think we're creating credibility, but actually we're creating confusion. And then it's designing with, again, simplicity and intentionality and consistency. And when you can bring those three parts together, your delivery is kind of a no-brainer. You've captivated your audience, you've engaged them, you've made it easy for them to understand. You're making information digestible and understandable and memorable, and people feel that, and you create that credibility, that authenticity. You create this brand for yourself, this persona, and people will stay engaged and they want to listen. There's so much neuroscience and interesting facts, but it's really about that simplicity, that consistency, and that intentionality once you know who you're talking to and why you're there.
So, I just had to do a dissertation and presentation defending that, and I had to condense all of my 3 years of work down into 20 minutes.
It's hard.
And it is hard. So, how do you help people transform complex content into visually appealing and easily understandable presentation?
It's part of my process with my clients. So I actually make them walk me through their slides, go through what their presentation is going to be. I ask them questions of who are they talking to? Where are they talking to? What is this meeting about? What are their end goals, right? I don't write the content, but I want to make sure that it's set up for success. And if they're not ready, then they go back and they write it, and then we come and work together. But having them walk me through their presentation and each slide individually allows me to really we create this brainstorming or this dialogue of like, okay, this is what the slide is about. Should this be the only thing on the slide? Should it be an illustration? Are we doing data? Or what should we highlight? And we start to have that, open dialogue as they're explaining it to me. I'm sort of brainstorming and sketching and bringing ideas back so I can understand what those key points are, and so that we can really focus in on those. And so that is how I first set it up. And then it's a process. Then we digest those, we start with a few slides, we digest them, we make sure it's understanding. A lot of times clients know what they want to say. They're either saying too much, or they just need a space to kind of work through it with somebody else as an outsider. And once they can start to do that and then bring those visualizations, whether it's leveraging, cleaning up the headline treatment, placement, having consistent brand and colors and fonts and treatments, stylizing things, designing your charts, creating an icon story, creating graphics, those kind of things, they really help to take words away and empower the slides to be that beautiful, harmonious background music to this amazing conversation that they're leading.
I love that. Sounds like what you're talking about too is how do you tell a story most effectively? So, can you give me an example of how you have worked with a particular project or client to successfully blend storytelling and presentation style into a cohesive powerful presentation?
Yeah. So again, I think it's about understanding their content and what they're trying to say. So I worked with a cryptocurrency startup, a finance startup. They have a lot of numbers, they had a lot of data, they had some trends that they needed to show, right? But it was about understanding what was important on that slide. What are those key numbers or things that need to be repeated and then what needs to stand out? And instead of just taking their Word doc, it was digesting their Word doc into, again, simple concepts or simple buckets so that we could really articulate the key things. And so I took a Word document and we made this beautiful 15-slide presentation, which had flowcharts and data and infographics and, just listing their portfolio examples, right? Instead of just having a bulleted list, it was designing them and stylizing the text so that you had a short headline or you had a subhead, and then you had a little descriptor, and then you had an icon that was easily connected to it. And it's bringing to life, to your point, that story with the balance of visuals and design that really helps to elevate that experience for both the presenter and the audience.
This is a general question. I know this is nice and different for everybody. Is there a perfect length for a presentation? Because sometimes we live in a television age now where our attention spans are kind of short. Is there, what you think is an ideal length for a presentation?
So I actually don't I don't have the answer to that. My approach is less information on a slide and more slides is actually more engaging, because the more you flip through and you change that, the more people know that there's something new that they're going to listen to, or they relook at it, right? If you have a slide that has all this information and you're sitting on it for a long time, people tune out. We are in an attention seeking economy. So you need to figure out how to stay engaged, and that can be through animation. But animation is kind of like a 2.0 version of a lot, for a lot of presenters, they're not comfortable. So I just build multiple slides. Keeping 1 to 2 concepts per slide or key things really helps. So don't cram everything into a slide. And that's why I say there's no right formula, because I'd rather see, personally, I think more slides is more impactful when they're designed right than fewer slides with too much information, because our brains shut down when we give this audience the right information sequenced properly. Our brains naturally put the puzzle pieces together. So it allows that engagement and that curiosity to stay alive for both the presenter and the audience when you lay it out properly.
So because we're not all creative like you are, what are some of the most common challenges you face in working with clients when you help them design these presentations?
I mean, for most of my clients, it's that they have too much to say and they have a hard time either cutting it, but they're open to dividing it up, I will say, but they don't want to cut it. But it's simple things of what I see is too many bullets that are run-on sentences, headlines that are not punchy, that don't tell me what I'm going to hear, what I'm going to take away, right? Our brains want to know what's going to happen so that we can stay engaged. Because if you share too much, you lose us. We tune out. It's not being consistent with fonts and colors or choices. It's having different styles, not just a bar chart and a pie chart, but it's all these different colors. And every time I'm talking about a product, it's represented differently and it's all over the place. That's really hard to notice. And we see that. But when you can be consistent, I mean, even just keeping your page number and your logos in the same spot, it creates a really simple brand standard. And it lets people know that you've taken the time and you care about what you're sharing. When you put too much in, when things look messy, it seems messy. And again, it's harder to stay engaged when it doesn't feel like the person presenting has taken the time to really articulate for that audience.
I'm sure you've done hundreds of thousands of presentations. Is there one that stands out because it really impacted you in a meaningful way?
They're all so different and so fun. So I do a lot of corporate stuff. I definitely have worked with nonprofits or just, more do good brands. But for me, it's not necessarily about the content. It's more about the people I work with. I love helping somebody who is I don't get it, but I'm so appreciative that you do. Or that wants to, I don't work via email. I'll schedule meetings, but I don't ask clients to write emails to give me feedback, because what they're saying and my interpretation might be different. So I like to get on calls. So it's so helpful to work through that creative process. And working with a lot of finance and tech and, pharma clients, they love getting on a creative brainstorm because it's totally different and it's outside their box. But when I can bring something to life and the smile on the other end of my client saying, you get it, I get it, they're going to get it. That is so powerful for me. I love that my zone of genius of being a presentation designer in PowerPoint specifically allows me to help shine somebody else's light brighter and bring them more confidence. It just touches back on my core values, and it's such a win-win.
So I've used PowerPoint. I even used Prezi at one point. That seemed like that was going to be the new tool, but it seems like it's kind of faded. As you look at the landscape of technology that's coming down the pike, is there some tool that you see that's going to transform how we do presentations down the road?
I mean, yes and no. I think they're all influencing how we do presentations. I think it's also just our society or what we're used to seeing. I think social media has changed the way we engage with people. But in the end, we really just want to connect with people. That's all a presentation is. It's having an authentic conversation, creating a story, creating that connection that brings you together so it makes sense, or you want to, so you trust that person, so you want to do business with them, so you want to move forward, so you want to keep that process going. So I think that all these AI things, and I use them too, are great tools. They're great supports to make it easier to synthesize. I use AI all the time to help me edit my clients' headlines. I'm not a writer, but if they give it to me and I'm like, oh, it's just like, I need like 7 characters shorter, AI does a great job of synthesizing and getting rid of those extra thes and ums and rewording things just to be a little bit more eloquent. So I think it's great. I know my son over the summer saw a commercial for Copilot, who is the Microsoft AI tool. And the whole tagline was like, take a 100-page deck, or take a 100-page Word doc and like make it into a deck. And he was like, oh my God, Mom, are you going to lose your job? And I was like, no, because one, it was cool that they actually like kind of understood what I did, because they don't really see me do my work. But two, I don't think so, because again, presentations, conversations, business is all about personal connections, and AI will never understand how to power humans to connect authentically. They will make it easier for us to do some parts of it, but you can't put content into an AI tool and say, build a deck, and it to know this is the thing I need to articulate and this is the power, right? It can give you some ideas. It can be a great launching start. It can be a starting point. PowerPoint itself has amazing templates. There's a lot of resources online. You can buy PowerPoint templates. Are they built for easy use? I can't answer that because I don't know how to use them. But they don't, they say, here goes your headline and here goes the thing, but your content is not cookie cutter, and they become cookie cutter, if that makes sense. And so it's never going to be a one size fits all. And so again, that's where I think my light shines, is I am a strategic visual storyteller. So I make custom presentations. I will do templates, but templates again are the same idea. They're a cookie cutter. Like if you have a template, it's a great starting point, but it doesn't always get those really big strategic thoughts and ideas into concise and impactful stories.
If you were coaching someone on being a better storyteller, what advice would you have for them?
The first 2 things are plan, get ahead of it, so you can craft your story, and get offline and start to outline what you want to say. I like Post-it notes in a Sharpie because you can't erase it. You can't, you could, but and you can move the parts around. It's part of creating that dialogue. There's a beautiful analogy I use where I have a 5-year-old and she loves to read. She don't know how to read. But why does she love reading? Because the power of a strong story with visuals that create empathy, that tell us, tell that connection, that give hints at how and what is happening, really do drive the understanding of who we are and what's happening. And so I think it's really powerful to plan ahead and start offline so that you can craft your story with the right visual intent to support your voiceover.
You talk about this seem to give you such joy. What is the most enjoyable part of what you do?
It's being able to connect directly with the person who is impacted by the presentation. So one of the things that I really struggled with in the agency world was I loved designing these amazing campaigns for big companies, but I never saw how that consumer engaged or felt when they saw that piece, that campaign, or that what it didn't make them buy a product. But with a presentation, that decision maker, that person who is going to present, owns the company, who is the CFO, who needs to tell their story, when they see that, they're more confident, and it's their smiles and their appreciation for, you get it, you got it, and now I can go do my job. It's the best.
That's awesome. If you were coaching someone who's like you, 16 years old, creative type, or something like you're doing, what advice would you have for that 16-year-old to get into your role, your business?
Yeah, I keep asking a lot of questions, stay super curious, and just keep exploring. Like I didn't know that this thing that I do even existed when I was 16, right? But I knew that there was something very interesting about designing or working and making art on a computer because I didn't have to clean up after and I could, kind of shut it down. But it just takes time and it takes practice and it takes, raising your hand and saying, I don't get it. Can you help me? Or can I learn from you? Or what do you got for me? So I think it's about staying curious and just keeping the hustle alive.
If you were looking at what to study in school, if I was going to do this more, what course would be most helpful for people going into this? Would it be marketing? Would it be creative design? Is there a particular?
Yeah, I think for me, my differentiation, I can say, right, because I only know my path, is that I did study fine arts. So I have that understanding of of how visuals tell stories. And then it's marketing and communications are something that I actually also studied, but it wasn't my focus because I think marketing and communications are a little bit different. It could be more analytical, it could be more relationship based, but from a presentation design standpoint, it's that strategy and understanding how art moves or works or how to stand up and take feedback and make edits and be collaborative. From at least, again, from my experience in my marketing and communications classes, it wasn't the same. It was go do this and then come back. And in the fine art world in my school, it was a lot of do the work and then let's talk about it and let's learn from it and let's build together. So I think that really has helped my journey.
Creativity. Now, I'm curious, how do you balance creativity with the need to clearly communicate and be concise? You're missing. You can be really creative, but with the creativity. So how do you make sure that being creative is also being clear in communication and also concise in your messaging?
That's such a good question. And I don't know if I have like the right answer. I can say for me, it's just the balance of I've always been this creative, quirky, very kind of outgoing, having and seeing the world, like I said, like in these simple and complex, taking these complex concepts and simplifying them. But I also love the strategy and the like left side brain of like how things work and the function and the form. And so for me, that collaboration is that strategic design. I think it's working and understanding and it's asking a lot of questions and getting curious. Like I didn't really realize the neuroscience behind how presentations work from an audience standpoint and what that means. And I've been reading and I've been asking questions and I've been part of communities. I'm part, like I mentioned, my health coach, like I'm part of a health community. And I realized like, oh my God, that's helped me stay healthy and mentally and physically, right? But then I'm also now part of a presentation community because there's like-minded people who will share information and it's gold. When you find people who are doing things that are similar to you and you can bounce ideas off of and not like be, and it's not that we're competing, we're growing together and nobody's going to take work away. I actually share work with people because I'm not right always for every project. I have a marketing group now too. I have an entrepreneurs group, a couple of them, because again, when you find people that are doing like-minded things, it makes it so much easier to figure out or to ask for help or to say, oh, I never even thought about it like that. Tell me how you do that. I'm going to give it a try. So I think there's that combination for sure.
So I kind of mean saying it's good to always stay curious, keep asking.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of brings back to this concept where when I first started designing or going on my own, I always thought I needed to show up to every meeting, like totally buttoned up, perfectly, like blowing them out of the water and like kind of like I knew it all and like they should be wowed. And what I've learned, and like when you ask like who was my inspiration, it's my kids who are curious, who like ask questions because they don't know, and their innocence doesn't mean that they're being rude or mean. It's just they don't get it and they want to know. And so when I shifted from protecting myself and being like, I know it all and I'm going to show up and I'm going to be the most amazing designer you ever work with, to I know my stuff, but if we work together, it's going to be even better. Let me show you my screen. Let's do it together. I've done the best I can, but I need help because this wasn't clear. It's opened the door to make my work so much better. I think that shift has been so powerful. So yeah, that curiosity is really, I mean, for me, it's just like, now it's like, I don't know how to not be curious to a point of fault. Like sometimes, right, where you're like, can't I just like be settled? Like, why do I always have to be like, what if? But the what ifs are like, to me, what drive me. I mean, they overwhelm me and then they drive me and then they overwhelm me. But isn't that life? It's all about dualities. So that is a good one. It's just actually, it was part of my husband's Halloween costume from like before we got married. And it currently houses our checkbooks. And it's got a Ruth Bader Ginsburg esque or a collar. I don't know. I think it's got some old refrigerator pictures. It's just something that like keeps ending up. And I don't know why it's still there, but it's there. And it's going to be here for a couple more months. And then I'm actually in the process of changing up my whole office scheme. So I think that's going to go, but I feel like it's too conversational. Maybe I need to keep it, but yeah, it has nothing to do with me. It's just a really great container. And it shows my quirkiness, right? I'm not this like structured, perfect, stylized person. I'm unique. I'm special. I'm not perfect, but I've got my own style. And I think that might reflect it well. I want my legacy to be that I am. I actually have this mission to be a magical badass. So I want to. It's like a unicorn, but cooler. I want to, and like, could I like just read it? I feel like that like makes more sense. So I want to be a magical badass. It's like a unicorn, but even cooler and better, rooted in love and kindness. I aim to sprinkle joy wherever I go while making a tangible impact. My mission, empowering people to confidently share their uniquely beautiful superpowers. Through my work, I design visually stunning presentations that not only tell stories, but also build trust, credibility, and authentic connection, spotlighting our strengths. I'm a firm believer that empowering others to shine bright enables them to make meaningful contributions to the world, both personally and professionally. So yeah, so that is my legacy is to be a magical badass, but really it's about spreading joy and sprinkling that for others to pick up and do it as well. I think it's the idea, we've talked a lot about being curious, staying true to who you are, and then it's about simplicity and consistency and intentionality. And I apply those to everything. Not just my design work. Again, in my like-minded communities and my curiosity, being simple, asking a lot of questions and being consistent with that really has paid dividends in my life and my work. I don't know. I mean, you asked about the chicken. I think that like covers it all. Yeah, I know, right? It's just, again, social media, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn under my name, Emily Schneider. I'm also on Instagram, currently under MZ719, but my website is also a great spot to learn more about me, my work, and how I help others, which is IamEmilySchneider.com. Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to chat with you today too.